In today's episode, we talked to Jordan Salvit from Paint Plot. We had a really great conversation today where we looked at the website and we specifically thought about the journey from people who maybe find Paint Plot through Google Shopping, land on a product detail page, and need to learn everything there is before they decide to purchase. We talk about some different strategies for what information should be prioritized, what might be less important, and what might ultimately be confusing and lead to a decrease in conversions. Let's jump in. Jordan, thanks so much for being on today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me, Ajay. I'm excited to be here. I am an entrepreneur. I have been in the space, in the e-commerce space for 10 plus years. I started my first business about, again, over 10 years ago, a subscription business in the cat space. It was a toy subscription business. It's still around. I called Kitnip Box, and we would sell toys and treats, and we still do sell toys and treats for your cat. But I sold that business and have reacquired. That's a long story, probably too long for this podcast. But while I was sort of in between owning Kitten Box, I decided to acquire a business called Paint Plot. And that's going to be the fun of what we talk about today. But it's a paint by numbers business, and we ship globally, but based in Australia. Or it was based in Australia. Now we're based basically in the United States and Australia. And it's been a fun test to see how we can approach and do the same kinds of things we were doing for Kitnip Box to other businesses, especially since I also advise clients on how to run their businesses profitably. So it's been a really great piece to say, hey, this is what I did, this is how I advise, and this is what I am doing now today.
Yeah, and we're really excited. We have you scheduled for a follow-up to talk about all your expertise. So just going to give a little hint at that for our listeners. So tell us a little bit about the target audience for Paint Plot. Who's looking for this, or what are they looking for?
Yeah. Right now, our target audience, and maybe it's a chicken and egg question. I'll say that. Instead of telling you what our target audience is, our current customer base is largely older people. And when I say older, I probably fit into this category, but largely, I would say probably 50s plus that have some more time, or even 40s plus that have some time to dedicate to painting, to something that is slow and methodical. The founder of the business started the business because he had an anxiety disorder. And he, as part of his therapy, he was told to do some repetitive tasks and therapies like paint by numbers. And so he started getting into it and saw how repetitive a task it was, but it was both meaningful because it gave him something that he created at the end of it, a skill that he was learning how to paint, and continue to evolve. And so those are our customers. Our customers really are, I would say, they have the time. It's not a small task to undertake to do a paint by numbers kit, and so that does take time to do. And so I would say that's why they're a little bit older, that can handle it and then have the patience to do. But really, the majority are just interested in having a new hobby to pick up, and that's really where this is, where they're painting. I think there's a lot of people that have tried to do like paint and sips and that kind of stuff. And they've done that, but those are 1 hour buckets. You don't walk away with skills, you just walk away with a nice painting. And so here, once you start to get into it and you do a lot more, you do end up building a really wonderful skill set. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that. So what is the customer side like? You mentioned it's methodical, it can take some time, but you also mentioned some skill building. So what's that life cycle look like? What are customers learning, and what's the experience like?
Yeah, customers are the first time you ever get a canvas, you look at it and it's a little daunting, right? I'll be honest. If you've never done a paint by numbers a canvas before, or a paint by diamond painting before, there are lots of little numbers and little adjacent things you have to fill in. And we send a good amount of instructions of how to get started, how to help you go in that
Mhm.
direction. But really, the skills are how do you make sure you don't slob on too much paint? And then eventually, how do you blend the painting better? So this way you don't see the lines and you can get everything connected nicely. There's a lot of eventual technique you learn, but the first painting, I think, is just an accomplishment to complete it.
Mhm.
And then afterwards, once you get into it, it becomes a little bit of a not only a really important hobby that you do, but a strong skill that you can start to draw or use those painting skills just in a really nice way.
That's nice. What are some of the challenges you have with, communicating what the product is like to this audience? And maybe we can start framing it in terms of conversion. Are there certain challenges that you've had or things that you've kind of worked through over the years with helping people understand the product?
I think I think that the first concern, which we do a good job at explaining, is that you get everything, right? You don't have to have supplies at home. As part of a kit, you get the whole set, you get the canvas, you get the paints, you get the paint brushes so that you can do it without having to go out and buy more. So that's, I think, the thing we do very well. But I also think people have an idea of what paint by numbers is from their childhood if they've never done it before, and they may just think about it as, hey, I'm going to color in and I'll be okay. And it is a more daunting task than that, right?
Hmm.
And so I think we have a hard time explaining that. And number two, because we are showing the paintings or the pictures of what the origin is for all of it, I think when there's a slight difference or a variation of the way that you did it was a little different, people are like, hey, it's not exact. But I would say most people are very proud of their final creation. So it's really getting them over that hump to be willing to take a risk and say, and also set the habit to building it and doing it.
Do you find that most people are purchasing this for themselves to explore a new hobby, or is it sometimes often a gift?
Most often it's for themselves. And what we find is that people will buy the paintings for themselves to give the finished product as a gift.
Hmm.
So we'll often do that before Christmas. We'll run some promotions a couple of months in advance. So this way they have time to do the paint by numbers and do the kit in completion before going and going live and giving it as a gift. Sometimes people give the actual kit as a gift, but I say the majority of the time it's the other way around. They want to give the finished product as a gift.
Hmm. Yeah, it's almost like they have someone in mind when they pick out what it is that they're going to be creating. Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
that's right. We have a new, we have just to kind of go here though, but one of the things that I find that I think is very interesting is the younger group of people. This is a big opportunity for us, I believe. The younger people that are learning to paint are very interested, have the patience. Actually, one of the people that bought the business with me, he has a daughter, a teenage daughter that is really loving getting into this hobby. She's learned a little bit how to paint in school, but this is really giving her more detail and more skills, and it's than she was getting beforehand. So
Mhm.
I think that's a big opportunity for us, but we're not tapping into that market right now.
Yeah, what I was thinking of when you said the paint and sip is I've done those, but they always feel like you're in a rush and you always want a little bit more time. So it feels like a nice way to really get into the details at home with your own time.
Yep.
Do you find that most of your visitors are on mobile or desktop? Do you have a preference on what we look at today together?
Um, let's look at mobile if you don't mind. I will say most of our traffic, if I'll tell you, take a step back and tell you about our traffic and where that comes from. I'm not sure if that's helpful in
Great,
your
let's do it.
discussion.
Mhm.
But the majority of the traffic comes from Google search. We had advertised, the majority of our advertising was on Meta, and the rising costs on Meta told us to take a pause there. So the bulk of our traffic comes from Google Shopping, actually, not just Google. So
Mhm.
people's first experience is the PDP page. That is
Mm.
where they're landing on that page. And so that's the bulk of our traffic. That's the bulk of the experience people start with,
Mhm.
either there or on a category page is the bulk is where that sits. And the majority of that traffic is mobile. So, despite us thinking of our older population and them thinking on purchasing online on desktop, I haven't analyzed enough to say where it sits, whether there more people are buying on their computer on desktops or not. But I think the majority of the traffic is coming from mobile.
And one other follow-up on that before we look at it is, are people general? Do you have a sense for if people have some kind of specific kind of painting in mind they're looking for? Or are they really just looking for paint by numbers first and then picking which one they would like to do?
So that's a great question, and I don't have a good answer. I believe it is the painting that drives people in the door. And I think it's both the painting and the price, but the painting is the big part. And the reason why I say that is we run a weekly vote where we get feedback from our community, and we have a huge outpouring of support and responses. And when we take their feedback and turn those paintings into actual paint by number kits, we immediately see responses. So, and an uptick in sales, because it is that the joy of both of them. They want to be able to have the skill, but really also want to have something they want to put up on their walls and they want to do.
Yeah. And I really love, I mean, anyone who's listened to the show before knows that I always call it out when I hear a company doing a great job listening to their customers. So excellent to hear that you guys have a method for doing that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We have the mobile version up, so we'll take a look at that together. We'll find a PDP here to look at as well. And I'm going to pretend like I'm not paying attention to what we're looking here and just land on a PDP, and then we'll get started here.
Okay.
Is this a pretty good example of a PDP someone might land on?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Good starting place. Okay,
Yep.
Great. Well, generally how we'll do this is I'm going to be sharing some feedback, but you know your customer best. So let's talk about what we're seeing and maybe some things you've tried out or have questions about as we go. Right off the bat, I see the photo front and center, and I see some nice little promo things at the top, maybe some incentives to stick around or to buy multiples. But the photo is really what's drawing me in. So I can see there's lots of detail embedded in here. I'm just kind of flipping through that. And then we've got a secondary support to go through those same images. I like to see this. I think this is actually a really nice experience. We've done quite a bit of testing on how these carousels work. And generally, the more support you can give in nudging with here's the thumbnails, here's some arrows, here's different ways to go through these, the more engagement you'll see with it. So great to see that.
Great. Do you find that this is too big and that the imagery up top is too big before they've even seen the name or the details or any of the action or the call to actions? Right, because you're looking at this now, you're viewing it on an iPhone. I see. So that means that everything below the hummingbird kit words is below the fold, right?
Right.
So would you typically recommend a smaller view of this, or what are best practices on that?
So if we were to remove from this context of a piece of visual art that you'll be creating with some visual elements that you need, I would say generally the best practice would be to have some action above the fold and to have more information peeking up. So because you guys are doing something very visual and because it may be important to really get some details from these images, this would be a test that I think would be a good one to run, is to see how important is this image being large. Can we potentially move these thumbnails maybe to the right side of it so people could move through them, see that assistance of the thumbnails being there, but still bring up some of that content above the fold?
Nice.
We do sometimes find that these like add to cart buttons can be successful as a sticky action, particularly when there's not a lot of decisions to be made. That would be another test to consider. That is one where we have seen it can be very helpful or very harmful. So I wouldn't just make that type of change. I think when we're looking for the basics on a PDP, we want to have the product image. You might consider moving the title a little higher up so they don't think this is the paint plot product, but they get oriented to this specific product. So maybe if they're moving between them, they can see that. Okay. But I like that you've got a lot of reviews and the price is pretty clear here. and then some decisions, frame, no frame. I am curious like what that looks like. So I see the no frame pops up when I click there, and then there isn't an image for the with frame. So I think, that's an opportunity there to potentially just be really clear of what it might look like between those two options.
Got it. Okay. Good feedback.
And I think overall in this space, especially on mobile, sometimes we want to just tighten up the decisions to be 1, 2, 3. And if there's something that people don't really need to do, we might de-emphasize it. So with that said, you have this quantity selector. You have this quantity selector that's quite big and prominent. Haven't seen your data to know if that's typical just to get one at a time. But if that's the case, we may want that to be a little bit more compact so that it's not, you have to make a decision and think about quantity, but instead it's the default. And if someone needs to change it, they can.
That's a great idea. Okay. Makes sense.
And I think, especially if these reviews hold up across these different products, I would draw more attention to reviews. That can be really positive. These are great. You have a good number of reviews. So you might consider, increasing the scale of those. If you move the title above the fold, you might move that as well. And then people can see the images and then make the two selections here that they need to make. Quantity might be de-emphasized and that add to cart might be there. So again, I would test some of those combinations together, but I think you've got some good basic elements here.
That's great. Good feedback. I think the idea of putting the title and the reviews up top is I think you're right. It's a great one. Otherwise, as you said, it may look like you're just arriving on the landing page without any real context of what you're looking at. Okay. Good feedback.
I think especially as you start to move between products, it gives you, some people learn through visuals only or primarily. Some people respond to words. And so giving kind of different people different ways to remember what products they're comparing could be helpful too. And that gives them that quick answer.
Yep.
I am curious, you have some add-ons here. So you have the brush sets. And when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that everything you need is in the kit. What's the relationship between those two things?
It's a good point. We give you the basics as part of your kit, but this allows you to have a larger variety or many details, especially for the harder sets that are, may have very small places for you to paint in. The ones we give you are good, but they are basic. Right. And so this is an opportunity for us to give you that add-on, but maybe you're right. Maybe it's a little confusing. So I think we put it there because in the past it was one of our best sellers as an add-on. It still is, but we end up seeing it being our best sellers as an add-on from the checkout as opposed to from the PDP page. So this may be a better opportunity to have maybe related items instead. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I had two thoughts come to mind for potential ways to kind of clarify what's included or not. Because you do have some information here, like the brushes are included. You might actually kind of demonstrate, free 3 brushes and then upgrade here with like a reason why you might want to upgrade and what the differences might be between these two.
Yep.
The other journey that's pretty common is that after you click add to cart, which we'll see if anything happens. You have this like you may also like. And so this may be a good place for that to just maybe clarify why you're adding it. Sort of not just that you can get brushes or brushes included, but if you would like some fine detail or to have a higher quality outcome, here's why you might want the upgrade.
Maybe if you go to the checkout, we have in here, and I can tell the quick add. Right. And we see the biggest uptick of these brushes here in the quick add. I wonder if I'm not sure I can modify the text on the quick add, but if I can, maybe that will be the opportunity to be like, hey, add in this, or to your point, all of those places I think are valuable or are valid. I think this is where we see the biggest uptick. And so figuring out how to explain this better in here would be probably great.
Yeah. And I think maybe the metaphor to carry wherever you end up with the best placement and what actually performs the best is letting people know why it's a good add-on and that they already get something with it. So it's kind of that balancing act of you've got everything you need, but your experience will be even better with this add-on.
Makes sense.
Great. So let's hop on back. I guess now I've made myself over to the homepage.
Yep.
This is maybe a minor point, but one of the things I'm noticing is sort of the font differences across some of your pages.
Okay.
And really, we want people to see these like free offers around free shipping or buy one, get one free codes. And visually, I think your logo is actually what's driving the attention because it's much larger.
Got it.
So on mobile, you might consider rebalancing the sizes of those things to really
Nice.
focus in on the thing that's going to motivate the purchase. And
Good.
I like the free shipping threshold you have here. The thing that we've seen as a level up to free shipping at this point is once you have something in your cart, changing that message. So it visually changes, it draws your attention to it. And the message might say something like, you're $54 away from free
Oh,
shipping.
interesting.
And then
Okay.
when you unlock it, you could say you've unlocked free shipping on everything. And so
Got
that you
it.
kind of like gamify in a tiny way the design of that section so that people realize that they're there and maybe motivated to stick around.
Okay, that's great. Do you have any recommendations for apps that do that?
Oh, I don't offhand have one. It's something that we've built in our testing directly. But yeah, you're
Great.
right. There were probably some out of the box ones that would be good for that.
Good feedback.
And so maybe the journey that someone might be on is they found the one image, and maybe they're wondering about the free shipping threshold. So now they're kind of at this place of getting to know the brand a little differently from another place. I'm seeing some opportunity on the homepage now for that same. You have like over 50,000 happy customers here. Like really draw my attention to that. I think that would be nice to see that a little bit
Even
larger
bigger.
there as well.
Yep.
I like that you've got the value propositions here. I don't recall seeing this on the product page, and this might be something worth replicating. So sometimes what we find is that things like free shipping thresholds can be really motivating, but people forget about them. And things that are value propositions can really get someone to understand like why this particular business, but they tend to forget it when they start thinking about other details. And we've found in testing that either adding it back to the product page or adding it back right before the order can just be that like, oh yeah, that's why I'm buying from this company reminder and nudge. So you might just
Interesting.
repeat the same block or have like a simplified version to remind people.
We had that block on on the PDP page before, so we did have it there, and we were trying to improve our conversion rates, and we started removing things from the landing from the PDP. So there's probably an opportunity for us to A/B test introducing those things again and going from there. But that also. We had our PDP page was extremely long, and it allowed people to continue to scroll forever. But if you want to if you scroll down and pick another painting, so maybe go to landscapes and pick one of them. If you scroll down here, you'll see, so again, the same format, but what we had down below, so all of this and then reviews, and then after the reviews, we have sort of you may also like. So beforehand, we had so many more things and that were here, and I don't know whether I think this is the right set, but I'm not sure. So I guess are there best practices that you see when you implement a PDP of how much is too much or
Yeah.
where is the right placement of this kind of stuff?
I think it's a really critical question, right? It's like, what do we need on this page? Honestly, with most businesses we work with, the first thing we do is simplify. So we would take what maybe you had before and bring it closer to what you have now. I think the main elements, I think when we first started on this page, I said, oh, you look like you have the main elements here. So I feel like you are in a pretty good starting place. You've got product image, pricing, a clear call to action, maybe some order and placement could be changed. I think one of the things that we find with testing are the place on add-ons and how often and where those get placed can matter quite a bit to the specific audience.
Okay.
I suspect this, like what's included, as an area I'd be curious to iterate on more, particularly on mobile, since these are pretty small icons right now.
Okay.
When we have like a big block of text, sometimes we want to collapse that. So if there's certain elements like the size of the painting that people frequently ask about, maybe we'd have different headers based on what kind of things matter to customers.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's probably a blend of research and the A/B testing to figure that piece out.
Yep.
I like to see the duplicate action items on any page. So that's nice to see. And then you've got the reviews here. And then I think you may also like in the FAQs, those are always one I'd want to look at in heat mapping to see if we're really getting people all the way down there. And if we see FAQs where people are interacting with them a lot, that typically is a good indicator that we should bring it up higher on the page, some sort of information about it.
Nice. Okay. Makes sense. Great feedback.
Well, as usual, this time flies. So I'm going to ask my last two questions. If you had to think about just 3 things from today's call that either you're going to take action on or that were inspiring some additional thought, what comes to mind for you?
Number one, immediately doing a test or putting the header on the PDP page further up to see if that could get there. And if we can get some more call to actions in on the PDP when you open up immediately. So that's probably 2 of the action items that I would immediately take. And then I think your homepage callouts were also spot on, trying to make the logo smaller so that that's the less prominent as part of what we're doing, and put the reviews and bigger in that place. So I think these are, I think maybe I covered 4 things as opposed to 3, but I think
bonus one for today.
Exactly. So I think that's where I would go. Great.
Well, Jordan, where can folks find you if they're curious to learn more?
You can find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, my last name is Salvit, Salvit. So just LinkedIn/in/Salvit. That's how you'll find me there. Or you can reach out via email, just jordan@salvit.com.
Excellent. Thank you for being on today, Jordan.
No, thank you for hosting me. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you for tuning in to the Experiment Zone podcast. You can check out more episodes on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and your favorite podcast apps. Check out the show notes for any websites linked in this episode, including where to connect with us on social media. We appreciate you tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you'll be updated of each episode release. And visit us at experimentzone.com for all podcast updates as well. Appreciate you dropping by.